Welcome back. We are on with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite Podcasting Network, episode 122. I am your Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, coming at you with my trusty crew of Trek miscreants, and we've got some serious Trek to talk about, including the return of Star Trek Discovery and the end
Yay.
of Star Trek Enterprise. Yay.
Less
I mean, boo. Less yay. Well, it was less yay, and it was even Welcome back. We are on with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite Podcasting Network, episode 122. I am your Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, coming at you with my trusty crew of Trek miscreants, and we've got some serious Trek to talk about, including the return of Star Trek Discovery and the end
Yay.
of Star Trek Enterprise. Yay.
Less
I mean, boo. Less yay. Well, it was less yay, and it was even less yay in the execution, but we'll get to that in a moment. There. Yeah, but I'm going to start all the way over at my extreme left in welcoming my regular Rogues Gallery, Mr. Aaron Heminger. Good evening.
Good evening. Happy to be here.
All right. And taking the center square, Mr. Peter Stein, always dressed to the nines. Ooh, you got a catchphrase now. There you go. Mm. I love it. And over from the Windy City in Chicago, the Chicago Trekker would be Jen Watson. Good evening, my friend.
Good evening.
All right. Well, we're going to jump right into this fine mixture of wonderful things we're going to talk about right after we give some love, respect, and affection to the fine folks that support us over on our Secret Friends Unite Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, you can snag a free 1-week trial, have access to ad-free regular podcasts, and a host of other super cool benefits, including a members-only channel in our Discord. Over on our Friends with Benefits level, Corey and HG, John Sedorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, Brendan Myers, and longtime show friend Matthew Keel. On our BFFs level, our top tier is the Nias family. Out there in the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. And your friend and my friend, Missy Merchant, who will be joining us this weekend. Our club, well, the weekend will have already passed, will be at the Grand Rapids Comic-Con in Kalamazoo. Don't do the math on that one. But it's their spring show down there an hour south of Grand Rapids. But it's a fun show, and we love working with those guys. We owe Grand Rapids Comic-Con a lot. We love doing stuff with them. So that will be fun, but that will be over by the time you're listening to this. So hopefully we saw you or through the beaming out good energy into the universe. You just know we're going to be there and you can swing by. That would be super awesome. All right. Well, let's dig into a little bit of news. We've got some, this is more Todd, my partner over on SFU. He loves to talk about mergers and acquisitions, and I can't stand it because that's boring grown-up talk. But there's apparently a real close deal in the mix with Skydance, a big production conglomeration looking to potentially snag Paramount. So, Star Trek could again have new ownership for not the first time in a long time. So this was reported by Trek Movie over a week ago. And I've not heard anything subsequently. Now, Peter, you were talking to the pre-roll. You seem to have a little bit more informed about what Skydance is all about.
No, not Skydance. I know more about the second one.
Okay. Well, then...
but Skydance, for those of you who aren't familiar, they're one of the production companies that worked on the J.J. Abrams films. I think they've been involved with the newer James Bond movies. So they've done a lot of stuff. So I don't know that... I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on it because it's, one company is a company, and I'm no Ferengi. I don't know things about companies. They just are.
Right.
So
I'm not impressed by the look of this guy in the article, though. I don't know, something about him I don't like. Jen, you work in the news space. What do you know about this story?
I have not heard anything about this. We're usually working on news about, or at least I am, usually working on news about the actual shows and plots and characters and things like that. So
things people care about.
The things I care about anyway.
I agree.
As long as Star Trek keeps on coming, I don't really care who owns it, as long as they don't mess it up.
They don't. Yeah, as far as they don't screw it.
Keep it going and don't mess it up.
they don't screw it too deeply into the ground. So, Aaron, any thoughts?
Well, I'm not the biggest fan of the way Paramount tends to run things, so I'm kind of optimistic about getting some new blood in there and hopefully seeing some new directions. Especially with the way they like treat their fans and even treating themselves, because some of the choices that they make from a business standpoint, in my mind, are just kind of baffling sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic.
Right. Well, we'll hang on to that cheery optimism and see where it leads us. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, Peter, you seem primed to talk to us a little bit about the Roddenberry Archive and the expansion of their virtual tour. So let's do it.
All right. So if you haven't seen it already, the news dropped that the Roddenberry Archives are expanding their list of virtual tours with the promenade of Deep Space Nine, the entire promenade of the set. I don't think it's been expanded to the entire fictional circle, which was redresses of the same set.
Right.
But you have the entire set with Quark's bar and Odo's office, sick bay, all of that. And the Discovery Bridge. I think they have a couple different iterations. So if you're not familiar with the Roddenberry Archive, the Roddenberry Archive is a free online archive where you can investigate ships, interiors, timeline events. It was originally started. This one is under the auspices of Paramount and Roddenberry. But this was actually from previously a group of fans who worked on the doomed Stage 9 project, if you're familiar with that, where they were working on building the entirety of the interior of the Enterprise D in a three-dimensional environment that you could walk around and do things with. They have since moved on to working on the Orville, which was the one property that allowed them to build a starship.
Great choice, guys.
Hey, they at least got to use all the things that they learned because there were similar systems. So other people of those have moved on to also work on Starship Simulator, which is another thing which you can find on Steam. But with this one, they have, if you go onto the Roddenberry Archives, there's videos, there's interviews with actors about their roles. There's reflections on things. There's digital recreations of earlier eras. So there was a stand-in for one of the yeomen from The Cage, and they recreated a shot with an actress and some other things to recreate the look. You can go through every single bridge of every single Enterprise through the entirety of the franchise. So the JJ movies, alternate timelines, both the Discovery version and the Strange New Worlds version of the bridge. You can see all of the different ones. And if you press the right buttons, you are actually able to maneuver yourself in a three-dimensional environment and look around the bridge. So there's a lot of really cool stuff on there. It's something that is being built by the fans for the fans, but now under the auspices of Paramount and Roddenberry, so that they don't get the good old Ferengi cease and desist.
The pinch, yeah, exactly. There's always legal things going on. And,
but if you're able to go and check it out, I would definitely do so. It's really, really cool.
Now, this mentions at the bottom here, it does give a link to Roddenberry, but it does mention for a limited time, the complete experience is available for free, both on the web and an Apple Vision Pro. So
I think that means that there's like a VR version that you can access for free. Okay. So I think the VR might not be fully free, but if you enter it in your browser, you are able to still look around.
Oh, okay, very good. So, yeah, I'm kicking myself for really not checking this out, so I guess I better get around to it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You can get into all the nitty-gritty details of any bridge that you want. So.
I love it. Gotcha. Jen, what would be your favorite thing to go check out on this?
I think DS9.
Yeah, the big promenade.
Yeah. The promenade, because there's so much stuff on there that you don't necessarily see, and so much thought that's been put into it.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my DS9 rewatch right now too, so I'm kind of in a full DS9 mode. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, there is a video that when this released, they actually released a video with Armin Shimmerman narrating the different spots that you could go.
Oh, that's cool.
On there, so there's like Armin Shimmerman going like, oh, and here's the most important part, owned by a certain proprietor. Like there's lots of shenanigans that go on with his commentary in there. So if you've got a chance, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, Armin's such a great guy. Aaron, your thoughts?
Oh, it sounds like a lot of fun. I definitely would love the opportunity to check out some of the interiors. I think I'd love to take a tour of the Enterprise D and get a real close because that's kind of the one I grew up with and
Yeah.
always been one of my favorites. So that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, Steph, cool. Well, again, at roddenberry.x.io is the web address. And if I remember it should be linked in the show notes. So, well, cool. All right. Well, let's move on to some honest to God live action returning new Star Trek with the 5th and final season of Star Trek Discovery kicking off. Now, I was very lucky. The wonderful folks at CBS did share this with me. It was right when we were getting back from the cruise, so beginning of March. So I had to rewatch these, and I even took notes the second time around, so I wouldn't be like, what happened there, guys? Because I know I do that a lot, and so I think it's very, very unprofessional. I don't like to do that. So, but I will. I'll give a kickoff. I'll read this little summary, and then we'll go counterclockwise as far as I'm concerned. So, Jen, Peter, and then Aaron, and bring it back to myself, and we'll all have our say. So, anyway, season 5, episode 1 is Red Directive. Captain Burnham and the Discovery are sent to retrieve a mysterious 800-year-old Romulan vessel until the artifact hidden inside is stolen, leading to an epic chase. Meanwhile, Saru is offered the position of lifetime, and Tilly's efforts to help pull her into a tangled web of secrecy. Dun, dun, dun. Everybody's doing stuff. Jen, let's recap our overall feelings about Discovery. Where do you land with Discovery in the greater scheme of things as a series?
I really like Discovery, especially after season 2. The first season did not sit well with me, but it's just gotten better and better since then. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited for season 5, and I think it has gotten off to an amazing start. I think that they just kind of cut to the chase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really liking this. I'm liking seeing kind of where we're catching up with everyone. Kind of how things are being handled here. I love the direction that they're taking Saru in. I love his relationship with Tarina. It's amazing. It's adorable.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this, and I like how they started it and kicked it off, and we kind of just got right into the action.
We did indeed. So we got one of these, flash forwards that Burnham's riding on top of a ship at warp in the spacesuit, which has become the Discovery cliche, because I read somebody else saying that, like, she does that in the first episode of every kickoff to this series. But I'm like,
just about, yeah.
I mean,
everybody does.
Yeah, everybody gets a cliche. It's not like it's really wasted. So, other thoughts before we move along? You're enthused. You're jazzed. You're loving it.
I'm excited for this. I think that I don't know if we're just doing general thoughts or like kind of specific things, but like
whatever you got.
Whatever I got. I love that they also so every season of Discovery so far has really had a mystery, and it's like, what is the thing going to be? And I really thought that with this season of Discovery, we were not going to know what we were looking for the whole season. And the whole question of the season was going to be, what are we looking for? And we wouldn't know till we found it. Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited that they did not do that. We know what we're looking for right from the beginning. I love the callback to TNG and how specific it was, like that such a coin, the Romulan costume that they had on this Velik guy,
and they did it fairly faithfully, and even that Romulan scout ship, that was pretty close. But you get figure it's 800 years old, and
the exterior was good. The interior didn't match, but that's
well, we didn't, because we have seen the inside of that, but it was in, I think, season 5, it was that episode where Geordi and Ro got phased. We spent a lot of time inside one of those, but it was also dark and blowing up. But maybe you just had to go around the corner and then it would look like what you saw. So, or this was the 2068 version where we were looking at the 2065
or
version.
This was the Rolls version. I don't know.
The Rolls, this is a Cadillac, tricked out.
Yeah, I'm pay more attention to the costumes than the ships, but I'm glad to hear that they got some stuff right with the ships too.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
cool.
It's particularly with this series being so like we're going to totally change the Klingons around and stuff that gives people like Peter and me
They
hives.
haven't done that since they've gotten. I mean, they haven't really done that since then. Since they got that blowback from season 1, like the
still
Klingons
have,
had hair
but-
again, and it was still weird. What's that?
I mean, but we haven't seen the Klingons. Like,
It hasn't been as egregious as the Klingons.
It hasn't been as in your face.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you want me to continue that thought, I can. But I was just going to leave it there.
Okay.
whatever floats your boat. So anyway, other thoughts before we let Peter loose?
Yeah, I'm excited that this is a thread that they're picking up on from TNG that they just left hanging. And there were so many of those threads.
Always, right.
Especially sort of near the end of TNG, where they just had these questions that just didn't get answered. Like, what happened to the warp speed limit? I don't know.
Right.
I thought that's what the burn was going to be, and it wasn't that.
Right.
Yeah.
Another one was, I remember reading in TV Guide when the 7th season of TNG started. The whole thing with Hugh and his Borg colony is they'll come back to it in another episode. They never did. But
we followed up with that on Picard.
Yeah, right. And then killed him off. Exactly.
I like that the newer shows are sort of addressing some of these things. I mean, to some extent. And I think that Discovery's handling this really well. I mean, you've got the archival footage of Picard that is lifted right from TNG. You've got the image of the progenitors. And for those of you who are, I mean, we're sort of talking around it, but they're referencing the chase from Next Generation, and the progenitors being the aliens that seeded life throughout the galaxy, and why it's basically the why of bipedal sentient species, humanoid in the Star Trek universe.
That even flies back to, and Peter backed me up, but a line that McCoy had to say about something progenitor related that came from TOS, and I'm trying to remember if it was.
I think it had to do with the preservers that one.
Yeah, the one with the Miramani and the Native American planet where Kirk lost his memory. But anyway, now we're really getting down a rabbit hole. Okay, we'll keep it rolling, Peter.
Yeah.
Just try to pace yourself. But give us some favorites if you can, and then potentially some things that were potentially not your favorite.
So I guess if you haven't been following the podcast, disclosure, I'm not the biggest Discovery fan, which everyone gives me crap for, and that's okay. Just the way it is.
IDIC.
So I thought it was interesting how this one began in Media Race, where we had like the beginning and the chase, and then all of a sudden we switch back, and then it's like, 24 hours earlier or whatever. So that hasn't happened tons of times. So it was interesting to see them do that. There's only a handful of Star Trek episodes that do that, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously the one that's the most hilarious is Cause and Effect. But,
right. Right. You really don't know what the hell's going on.
I remember the first time I watched that one, I was like, did my disc skip? What just happened?
I remember back here locally, Channel 3, which is out of Kalamazoo, always showed TNG in syndication. And a friend of mine remarked to me after that episode was on, she was like, did something keep skipping at Channel 3? Because I felt like they kept coming back after the break, and it was the same act,
Yeah, pretty much. So, so I thought that was interesting. I did like how... we had a second ship that was involved. I did like the introduction of the new captain, whose name is escaping me for some reason. Rayner. Captain Rayner. I have thoughts about him from the second episode that I'll save for that.
Okay.
Interesting introduction to him. I did appreciate the visual continuity of the Romulan costumes, because I know that I have been rather vocally picky about Romulan outfits in Picard. They didn't quite have the full boxy shoulders, but that's okay. because it was still the same fabric, and they actually got the shoulder belt with the symbol correct, which is very, very unusual.
We pick our nits around here.
That was major kudos right there. I did think that the interaction between Saru and Tarina was great. I'm a big fan of Vance, so I liked how he just kind of helped out Tilly. That was hysterical.
Yeah.
He was in the dark too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like that he's not a Badmiral. Like, we get a lot of Badmirals, and so I'm glad that he's not.
Yeah.
So that's a plus, and it's interesting to see, the Starfleet CNC actually doing something other than sitting in an office.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Yes. Starfleet is, and it really underscores how different Starfleet is. Because Starfleet is a space station. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's behind a cloaking shield because so much has changed. Which is also what Rayner gets caught up in, both in this episode and the next.
Yeah, the next one more so,
because he's changed with the times, and now the times are changing again, and he's like Captain Maxwell, trying to go blow up some Cardassians. He's just he's not switching back. So that really crunches on him. So, other thoughts before we keep it rolling?
No, I liked this. This episode was a fairly decent start to the season, and I did like the callbacks to the chase. I do have concerns, which I'll bring up in the next episode, but I do like that we're connecting to previous things. This was not the thing I was thinking they were going to connect to when they did bring up Romulans.
Right.
When they first mentioned it, was like, oh boy, what is this going to be? Are we just going to somehow have Thalaron suddenly be the biggest thing since the burn again?
Oh boy.
But thankfully not.
Yes,
so I'm more okay with this because it's not the Romulans being the whipping child of villains again. It's something else.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha.
Thank you for the bait and switch discovery. I'm actually happy with that one.
It was a good bait and switch. You don't get those all the time. All right, Aaron, break it down for me.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of feel like Discovery has always been kind of a mixed bag. And I kind of feel like with this opening, I think that trend continues because there's a lot of what I like about Discovery in this episode, and there's a lot of what I don't like about Discovery in this episode.
Yeah. I ran into a lot of that too.
Yeah. So I think my biggest issue with them sometimes it feels like they're trying too hard to be Star Wars as opposed to Star Trek. And I kind of saw a lot of that in this episode with them going to the desert planet and then the speeder bikes and
oh my God.
I forgot that was this episode, not the next one.
You see, that's why I took notes because, and again, I hadn't seen it in a month. So I was like, I better, And that was one of the very first thing on my notes. I'm like, oh boy, speeder bike shootout. I said it's predictable, but it was fun, but it was super predictable.
You're right. It was fun, but yeah, definitely predictable. But yeah, so that's kind of like I kind of have a hard time kind of finding Discovery's identity sometimes because I feel like it emulates a lot of other things a little bit too much sometimes and isn't necessarily purely Star Trek, which is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just it's different and it doesn't always capture my attention. I really enjoyed the villains of this. I got to meet Elias Tuflexis at the last Hall of Heroes Comic.
Yeah, I met him in Vegas. He was at one of the parties I went to. Super nice guy. And I met Eve Harlow. She was on the cruise and ran one of the trivias we did. And she's super, or one of the karaoke's we did. Super fun girl.
Cool guy. Just absolutely real too. Like he spent some time talking with us and we chatted a little bit about Discovery. And I kind of was kind of bluntly honest with my feelings about Discovery, and he was really receptive about it.
That's awesome.
We had a really good talk, and I feel like we really hit it off, and it was a lot of fun. So it was fun seeing him in this because it's like, hey, I know that guy, and that was kind of a exciting.
Even though he's wearing a big old green head or whatever.
Yeah.
Still know him.
Still counts.
Yeah, still counts.
But yeah, no, I really love the callback to the chase and going back to the what do they call them? The progenitors?
You're right. Yeah. Preservers, progenitors, pick one.
Yeah. Okay. The P race.
The P.
I see. I calling them the progenitors.
I could make that
the progenitors in this. So far as we know, the progenitors and the preservers are two different
I
groups.
could
But
make that the episode title, but it's a little open to interpretation. So we'll pass on that. So far, I've got Jen's Cut to the Chase as the name of the episode because
I like that one. Yeah, but no, I'm glad they're coming back to that a little bit. Like I was talking to Jesse when they brought that up, and I was like, okay, so they discovered this progenitor race in the 24th century, and it took until the 31st century for them to get around to actually looking into this. I'm like, they took their time. That's
right. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of, but I'm kind of glad to see them go back to it because I always thought that was kind of an interesting plot point and an interesting way of explaining why all these races look kind of inherently human in base, and we don't see any truly alien creatures, with the exception of like Tholians and Gorn and a couple outliers here and there. So I definitely want to see more evolution of that and see more of that and how that is going to play out with this whole ongoing mystery and everything. I'm excited for it. It's something I always wanted to see them come back to. I know it wasn't like the most popular thread point back in the day, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see them expand.
Well, they picked something interesting and unexpected to expand upon, and I think that is what I feel like is working for all of us. So, as far as me, I like going last because I let you guys. It's not just all about me like banging the gavel and being the big guy. I have said publicly on a lot of social since I watched this, I think this is a series high. I think they're off to a great start. There's a lot of positives going on. There are some of the cliches holding back and characters that I don't enjoy that are still bogging me down, like Adira, and then you get Gray back again in a couple of episodes from now. I can't stand the two of them. I'm sorry. There's characters that they're just not for me. So they bug me. Sorry. I'm sure they're wonderful people in real life. And I know another super unpopular opinion. I've never been super fond of Tilly, and I know shoot daggers into me. But they try to cutesy her up and make her fun and an interactive part of it. And I don't know. And we fall into another group of, we're going on the first mission, so we bring in the away team. It's the captain and the helm officer and the comm officer. So it's like we're right back to TOS helm missions. It's not, I thought the first officer and because on TNG it was Riker and Data and Worf and they'd bring along Geordi if they needed him, and God forbid they needed Beverly, and maybe they'd pull in, Troy, but the captain would never go because that was the reverse of Starfleet policy. Now, in fairness, Burnham is from a time when they didn't do that, but still it just seemed weird to me. But I felt like it's still trying to plug in the helm officer, Owushikun, who they did some background on last year, and the comm officer, who I think that was actress Sarah Middich. If I'm not, I met her on the cruise last year. She was super nice, but I felt Discovery, when they fall the flattest, is when they try to shoehorn in the other bridge characters without really developing them, or they haven't been developing the whole live long day. When I really like sticking with the core characters. I love Saru. God, I love Michael Burnham. What a great character. And then meeting Sonequa on the cruise, she's just a great human being. Fell in love with Rayner immediately because I like the actor. He's fantastic. I didn't realize he's an older dude. He was born in 1960. So he's as old as Doug Jones, and Doug Jones is an older dude, but he looks very young. So clean living or not clean living. I don't know. Good genetics. I have no idea. But I actually think he's a couple of years older than Doug. But yeah, those were we touched upon the speeder bike thing and so on and so forth. We run into both in this episode and the next one, the whole transporter thing. Everybody has a transporter, but there's always an occasion where they have to somehow be beamed from the ship. So you got to get back to the thing, or there's interference or whatever. So
yeah, the transporter rules and the shield rules in this episode in particular drove me up a wall.
Yeah. And the
particularly the ships, because there is no reason in the Great Birds galaxy that you need to dive bomb a ship into the sand.
That was definitely
you can extend your shields from above it. Right. That's all you need to do.
Well, could also have used like the tractor beam with like a reverse polarity or something,
or the deflector dish. There's multiple things. It felt like
of cool.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it was, and it just was one of those like.
It looked super cool, and it was very JJ like. I hate to say it.
Yeah. It also fell victim to one of the sins that I will kick Voyage Home for, which is going to warp inside of a planet.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because they did, once they picked up the whales, they were like, let's go. And you see them pull over a cloud and they're like, whoop. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
which we do know that that causes major problems.
It's a bad
Yes.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you're not
it
even
rips
supposed
a
to put
hole. We
You're not
think that
even-
we're burning a hole in the ozone layer.
Bad
This
idea.
rips away the atmosphere.
Not even
So
supposed
don't do
Not
that.
really using the atmosphere for anything. It's fine.
Yeah. We'll get another one. We'll pick one up at Walmart. It'll be fine. Okay. Moving on. Oh, moving on to episode 2. Where apparently we're going to Tatooine because it's called Under the Twin Moons. Or
But we had Tatooine in the previous episode, so surprise.
it's yes,
Tatooine is 2 suns.
moon, suns.
Yes,
You know,
true.
there's the forest moon of Endor. You know, how many nits do you want to pick? But
of
yes,
them.
you got a good point.
All
All
the
of them.
nits.
Yes, all
okay.
the nits. On Saru's last mission is Captain Burnham as Captain Burnham's number 1 because he accepted a ambassadorial post, which was hinted about. The team ventures to a seemingly abandoned planet to hunt for what might be the greatest treasure in the galaxy. Well, that's very bland. But that is essentially what they're doing. We're going to a desert planet. We're going to a jungle planet. So we get, we are doing, like Peter said, like Aaron said, we're getting very Star Warsy. Like, let's pick a different planet atmosphere to hit each time. But anyway, it's not my turn to go. It's Jen's turn to go. Give it to us.
You can go. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Why?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
So this reminded me of the TNG episode where they had the automated weapons
Arsenal
on
of
the
Freedom.
planet.
The Arsenal
Yep, that's
of Freedom.
exactly what it
Arsenal of
reminded me
Freedom.
of too.
And that's, believe it or not, after we're done with Discovery, that's our next random episode is that one, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll be talking about that in a couple of months.
Fantastic.
Isn't that weird?
Shampoo bottle Echo Papa.
Reminded me of that. Was waiting for them to say they were from the Good Ship Lollipop or something. But, yeah, so-
Bryce, where did you come from? I was over there. Okay. That episode.
So I liked this one too. I liked the relationship between Saru and Burnham has evolved. They really hit that home in this one.
Mhm.
They kind of made it seem like maybe Saru was going to die. I'm glad he didn't. Well, because sometimes when you really push someone's like, oh, it's their last mission, and you like really kind of reflect on the character's journey,
it's
like
It's from retirement.
it
it's
really,
buddy cop speed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that
I'm
thing.
getting
It's
too old for this
telegraphed
shit.
death. So I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I think an ambassador job is perfect for Saru. That really is good for his
Action Saru.
and I like Action Saru. Here's
Yeah.
the thing: we did not get enough Action Saru until like this episode, and then
No.
like the one in. I mean, I feel like we haven't had a lot of Action Saru.
One in season 1 where he goes a little wacky
Season 1.
and it's the
right, and
tower.
that's not even him. That's the
the-
energy aliens taking him over.
Yeah.
But like,
spores or something, whatever.
yeah. So I'm glad that we got that. I thought it was really cool. I think that they came to the realization of the Romulan poem. I felt like it was a little too easy
Mhm.
for them to find that and to kind of like move. Oh, it must be under the stone because we
Yeah.
know of this and that. And it's like,
Right. And the thing is, they
How
both
do
came
you-
from a time where there were no Romulans, so they're very bookish and did a lot of Romulan
Right.
reading. Yeah, that seemed very unnatural because
and
again,
I mean,
yeah,
it
they never
makes
knew Romulans.
sense for Burnham because she's a xenoanthropologist. But like, why would I don't know when she would have had the like. Why would she look into Romulans?
And
I
why would she know it so like off the
Right.
cuff? It's not like, well, let
I
me
don't
look
know.
in my guidebook.
I'd expect Saru to know that more because he's the one who's dating the president of Nivar. So
Right? Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I don't have a lot of complaints about Discovery, but one of the complaints that I do have is that the answers come a little bit too easily
That's fair.
to everyone, not just Burnham. It's an everyone thing.
Mhm.
But I understand too that we are pressed for time in a certain amount of in a certain way.
Mhm.
So the answers must come
Yes,
before the end of the episode.
right. That's
I
very
feel like it was-
Voyager. Always happened in the last 10 minutes. Like,
I like that it was
yeah,
contained though.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I
I agree.
like the episodic nature that this season seems to be taking. That's good. I'm not sure what to say next, but I'm sure I'll think of something.
You slide right back in. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, and I wanted to also mention the android.
Oh,
We didn't
Fred.
mention before. Fred.
Fred. Yeah, that
That
actor. Was that in the previous episode or was that?
Yes, that was the
That was the previous episode.
Gotcha. He
It was not this one.
That actor seemed very familiar, and I didn't take the time to go and look him up, but yeah,
I
but
think he may have played the androids in Picard season 1.
There you go. There you go.
Rebellion
That
thing.
would make sense.
So he was part of that crop, but
the hairless ones, you know.
But he got the hairpiece. He was like,
yeah, he got hair.
I'm taking the hairpiece. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
No, I totally.
That's where I think he's from, but I could be wrong.
And it was super cool that he was, an 800-year-old android because, of course, Data would have also lived and did end up living to be that long, and he could still be around in this time frame. You know what I mean? There's nothing to say because he was back alive again at the end of Picard season 3.
Well, I think there's things with Data particularly that he wouldn't be based on Picard season 3. Right. If they put Lore back together, Lore could be around.
Yeah.
Which would be a horrible day for everyone, but he could be.
Yes.
But it's grand storytelling. All right, let's keep it moving. Peter, what do you got?
This episode felt a little derivative to me. Because it reminded me of Arsenal of Freedom. Like there were moments where it was like, they're going to jump behind something. They're going to fall behind something. And they did.
Right. Or they're in between the time that the thing activates and the transporter won't work. So it was
right. So there was a little that was like, especially because they're a little wishy-washy with how the transporters work, which just annoys me anyway.
Yeah.
One thing that I know I'm probably going to be the only one that really picked up on this, but the statue that the things came out of reminded me of an alien from Mass Effect called the Batarians, which was hilarious because I and others have been poking fun at Picard for borrowing heavily from the Mass Effect series. So it was just one of those like,
interesting.
Is this really what you want to do?
It's all one.
I mean, whatever, but I thought it was funny. It could have been. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So where it was just like, oh look, a Batarian, funny.
I thought it looked like a Celestial from the MCU with the multiple.
I think it needed another level of eyes, but yeah,
my point of reference though.
Statuey thingy, I see that now thinking about it. So
so that was interesting. I did think that the Romulan poem was a little,
Yeah,
they did get it a little bit too quickly. I also have not been a fan of the. Everything about Romulans has backdoors and all that. I actually got into a spat with Michael Chabon about that. He got very mad at me.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah, I got called names by Michael Chabon.
By Michael, the producer of Picard?
Yes, I did. So I don't like that part that they've inserted into Romulan culture, so I'm never a fan when it pops back up.
Oh my gosh.
So there's that. I'm interested to see how Rayner works out here because it's interesting that he's now he's going to be the first officer on Discovery.
Right. Yeah. We wound up there. And again, episode 3 has already dropped by the time we're talking.
I haven't seen it yet because I didn't have time today.
We're just covering these 2 at a time. So
So there's like. So there's a concern that I have with this because there's a trope that Discovery often does, I guess a cliche, which every show has. Mm-hmm. But often you have characters that go from being antagonistic or, an alternate viewpoint to Burnham and crew to becoming sycophantic is a little bit too strong, but it's in that ballpark.
Team players?
It's not team player. It's where they don't have their own thoughts anymore, which is irritating. So like, again, it's a little hyperbolic, but for instance, in season 3, with Admiral Vance, where he would like tell Burnham, hey, you're not doing this right. Hey, there's this. And I liked seeing that confrontation. Mm-hmm. And then later in the season, all of a sudden he was just supporting her and there wasn't any like, hey, no, this, we don't do this that way. Well, I like that they're putting like a foil because Burnham as a character needs that. I think
she does.
She really does. I think that she's better when she has a foil. I don't like the And it doesn't happen in every show, but I just don't like when everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Oh yeah, that's a great idea." We need the Worf, blow them all up, Captain. Even if it's a no, Worf, we're not going to do that. So I'm concerned that we're going to have another instance where Rayner goes from. I don't mind if he goes from being antagonistic to being sympathetic, because that's a good character arc. But I don't want him to suddenly switch to like, "You're always right, Michael," because I don't like that.
The thing, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
But the thing that I said that I liked about Rayner is that he is telling her very in no uncertain terms he is not going to do that.
Yes.
And
They said they implied that with Vance as well. I'm saying this is concern. I'm not saying they're going to do that, because they said that he said that he's not going to. But just based on how things have gone before, I am concerned that's what's going to happen. That he's going to lose that foilness and just become a yes man, which I don't think is helpful for either character.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I understand the concern. The concern is valid, especially based on what has already happened. I also think that Rayner is an example of he's a voice that's been needed on Discovery, I think, because he is a voice from an earlier time, a time that has been a little bit more war-torn.
Right. A bit more of an outsider. Yeah.
Right. He is. And I mean, I've noticed that we have other, 32nd century people on Discovery now, because you have lieutenants who were not with them before. Everyone who's with them before is now suddenly a commander.
Right.
For some reason. But
or so you can guess with those stupid badges. Guys was driving up the goddamn wall.
Right. So
little tiny chevron.
Rayner reminds me of Shaw from Picard.
He does.
Right. Super grumpy. Super grumpy. Love it.
It's not about being grumpy. It's about having his own convictions about how he wants to operate, and that being different to our heroes that we're supposed to like. And I think that Shaw had that antagonistic to sympathetic.
Yes, and they did that well.
They
Very
did.
well, yeah.
And that's what's making me, I know that they're completely different.
They're completely different characters. Completely different characters different situations.
Completely different circumstances and completely different writers. But like the fact that the audience response to Shaw has been, I hate him, to, oh my God, if anything happens to him, I will riot.
Whoops.
I think that I'm very hopeful for this to be for Rayner and Michael to be challenges to each other, because Saru being Michael's first officer is going to be the one who's going to be very gentle and very tease it out of her.
Yeah.
And same when she was his first officer. Saru's great as a first officer. I don't think I like Saru the captain as much. I think that the ambassador job is better for him because he
doesn't have that same commanding presence in the same way.
Right. He's very gentle. He's very nurturing. He's
a great leader, but he's just not a captain. There's differences there.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me get to Aaron because we're flying.
Sorry.
So Aaron, please.
Man, I don't know how to follow that. I think you both did an excellent job covering everything. I agree with a lot of what both of you have said. So I'm going to try to not be repetitive on my thoughts here. I will say, I'm definitely enjoying Rayner. When I heard his name was Captain Rayner, I was immediately like, cool, is there going to show up? Classic StarCraft reference there. Very, very might have made me a little biased toward that character being an old StarCraft fan. But yeah, I thought he was a lot of great. I found myself agreeing with a lot of his perspective on a few things. And the entire time, I think my favorite parts of this episode were largely Rayner's scenes. And I really enjoyed his little hearing that they had where they were reviewing his performance and everything, and kind of, listening to them tear into him a little bit, and then his rebuttal and everything. I thought that was a great scene, and I was really enjoying it. The entire time he was talking, I kept thinking, he's out of line, but he's right.
Yeah, it's like from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? He's
Yeah,
out of line, but he's right. Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Does that well.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. I always love Saru. I think he's a great character. I love Doug Jones, and I love the character. And anytime he's in the scene, it's always a good scene. And I enjoy his relationship with Michael as well. And I thought that was great. I this one kind of left me scratching my head a couple of times with the stuff going on the planet. I was kind of like, why are there only two of them going?
Right.
It seems
Kind
to me
like the away team from the previous episode of like, oh, there's three of them, but it's a weird, like, how do you pick these people? It's just, yeah.
Yeah, just some of the choices they were making kind of had me scratching my head from a technical perspective, because I'm like, if I were in charge of this mission, I would have done this completely differently. Like I find myself criticizing a lot of the command decisions that are made on the show, from a character perspective. The one thing, I agree with a lot of what Peter said, but the one thing where it really kind of lost me in this episode was when they find this little artifact piece and they bring it back to the ship and they're putting it together and they're like, oh, it's a map. And I'm kind of like,
it's the map to Skywalker. What?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a goddamn MacGuffin. Why do we need another MacGuffin?
Oh, but now we have 5, and it's going to be the Red Angel. So we're going to go, and then we got to chase this thing. And that. So yes, it is. It's Puzzle Quest, is what I wrote down. It's Puzzle Quest.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, other than that, I think everything else has been said. This episode didn't do a whole lot for me, but it definitely had parts in it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. This is why I like going last, because I don't have to run over ground. I will bag on the fact, they had a Tilly in a deer scene, and I was like, just please get me back to the main plot line. I'm sorry. I know it's very unpopular to rag on these characters, but they're not for me. They're definitely for a portion of the audience. It's not me.
They're for me.
So that was something that Jen really enjoyed, and I can appreciate that. Got some good screen time with Culber, who I love, our little Ricky. If you ever watched My So-Called Life when you were young, like me, loved Action Saru. Were the aliens that put everything? Did they say it was the Promelians? Did I catch that? Like from the Booby Trap?
Yes.
There you go. Boom. More TNG. I sent Peter a post from Instagram earlier today that was that old meme of Elmo where he's looking between two things. One of them is a big pile of cocaine, and the cocaine said TNG references, and Elmo just buries his face in the cocaine. That's kind of what we got going on here. But that's okay. You know what? That speaks to my heart. But we're going in a good direction. We're going to wrap this up because we've ran really long, which I love. But we're going to be back to talk about episodes 3 and 4 next time. I found these to be better than 3 and 4. But we will talk about that when we get to 3 and 4. Yeah, Peter's
why you gotta scare me?
I think there are other aspects of 3 and 4 that people will enjoy more than I did. But again, I think we're off to a great start. I like the puzzle quest. That's cool. Chase it. We get a connection between Eve Harlow's character and Booker, which is great. Book being back, they're fine. He and Burnham are estranged, and they're dancing around with that. It was great to see Grudge the cat again. The holographic mouse was great. Got to get one of those in my house because Jen, as a cat owner, you can appreciate how great that would be.
Unless your cats care about it as much as Grudge did.
Yeah, exactly. Grudge is 100% cat. He's
the queen of the house will care about it as much, yes. And then the little boy is going to go all over it. So
yeah, absolutely correct. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up first part of the show, and Jen is going to leave us. So thanks, everybody. Jen. Thanks. Where do people find you out there?
I have a link tree that is linktree.com/JenWatsonArt. There you will find links to my Etsy shop, my Instagram, my Facebook page, and my author page on Screen Rant, where I write on their Star Trek beat.
Woohoo! Star Trek beat. We love it, and I love reading your stuff, Jen. Good.
I also have a theory.
Oh, okay, please.
I have a theory. They were going to say that this season of Discovery is going to connect to every single other Star Trek show somehow.
Okay.
All of the TNG references in episode 2 here are really interesting. And I'm wondering, 10 series, 10 episodes? Coincidence?
Get ready
I
for
don't know.
that. Get ready for that Lower Decks
We'll
episode
find out.
where we get the characters crossing over again.
Could happen.
Oh, maybe we'll get the other two. We'll get my boy Eugene Cordero and then Intendi. That'd be awesome.
I have a different theory about that, but I might just kind of keep to myself on that one.
That's all right. We'll get there. All right, gang. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back. Jen, we'll see you next time.
All right.
We'll be back in a second.
Be the Starfleet you wish to see in the world.
That's the one. Okay, bye. Okay, we're back. Quite a rousing discussion about Discovery. I love it. We'll have to eliminate the news next time so that we don't run so long, unless something super newsworthy happens. But anyway, we have gotten to the end of Star Trek Enterprise, the second and only well, excuse me. I don't know if you would consider, was the animated series really canceled, or did they just quit making it?
I think they just quit making it. I don't know that it was officially canceled. They just kind of gave up.
I mean, and a lot of people tend to lump it in, and I don't know that it's necessarily canonical to say, oh, the animated series was the what should have been the fourth season of TOS or whatever. I don't know. We're not here to figure that out.
Its canonicity is debatable.
There's
certain parts of it that are, and there's certain parts of it that aren't.
Just like with the Star Wars EU, which is a whole nother conversation to have. Mm. But anyway, this show was canceled. It was canceled in early 2005. And as a matter of fact, the first two-parter that we're going to be talking about, I have read quite famously that during the shuttle deck scene in the second part is when everybody got the news. So yeah, that'd be a tough day on the job. But yeah, the word came around that everybody was getting the whack. So anyway, with that, we launch into talking about episodes 18 and 19. I will blast through these summaries and we'll kind of talk about these two. We've got two-parters and a one-parter. So in my opinion, we'll kind of launch through them all and do it that way as opposed to breaking it down. But we can slow down and pick it up just based on that. But anyway, the first of the two-parters is a very unique, the only until potentially we get to Discovery, but I don't think so. It's the only Mirror Universe segment which is set completely without any of our regular characters. It only reflects things happening in the Mirror Universe, which is kind of cool. And it's one of my all-time favorites. In a Mirror Darkly, parts 1 and 2, from in-universe time frame of January 2155. James L. Conway and Marvin Rush handled the directing duties respectively. Mike Sussman tackled the writing for part 1. I hated to say canceled, sorry. And Manny Cotto and Mike Sussman were screenplay and teleplay respectively for part 2, and these aired in April of 2005. In the Mirror Universe, Commander Archer mutinies against Captain Forrest in order to capture a future Earth ship found in Tholian space, bringing it right back to TOS, which was a real hallmark of this season. Unfortunately, and those were also great, but it was unfortunately ultimately a little too late. Within the Mirror Universe, the destruction of the NX Enterprise leaves the crew stranded aboard the USS Defiant, a ship from a future parallel universe where a governing body, which they discover by reviewing the Defiance records, is called the United Federation of Planets. And this inspires T'Pol to speak out against the tyranny of the Terran Empire. So, remembering you guys' background in Discovery, Peter, you watched it maybe about 10 years ago. You watched the series for the first time.
Though, I do have to say, this was one of the first episodes I watched when I was traveling. I turned on the TV in a hotel.
Oh,
and I think we watched the episode right before this, which was the Orion episode.
Yes.
I think.
Oh my!
And so we're like, okay, that's interesting. And I was like 16 at the time.
Oh Lord,
so that was an interest. And so we're like, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden, and then In a Mirror Darkly started, and we're like, huh. And so then, my brother and I sat and watched both parts. And we were up way too late because it was like, already 10 o'clock when this started. So my first full introduction to Enterprise was these two episodes.
Interesting. Right at the end of the series. And then Aaron, you are new to the series overall, as I recall.
Yeah, I've never seen any of these episodes. This is my first time watching them.
Gotcha. All right. Well, based on that, Aaron, why don't you take over and as a first timer, completely pulled apart from what you've watched more recently in Enterprise? What's your take on this two-parter?
It was interesting, especially, the way they kind of dropped us in the middle of the mirror universe, sort of, with it was exciting seeing the opening with First Contact, because, I love that movie. It's a personal favorite of mine. And seeing the Vulcans landing and Cochrane coming up to greet them, and then they all pull their guns out and just blow the Vulcans away.
So great! Oh, I love it. I mean, it was to my eye, it was the cuts were as good as they could have been because they used all that footage, and then they had to show when the Zephram character, Cochrane character, raises up his hand, but then into his jacket and he pulls off a sawed off. That was obviously the film changed, and it's funny that run up. One of the shots, the film quality changed, and it was an actor who you didn't see from First Contact. So you're like, yeah, something's going. This guy's going to do something. And then he was the guy who said, storm the ship, take everything they got. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, exactly. It was like they landed their ship in Baltimore or some shit. April and I just finished watching The Wire. It was bad.
Yeah, I got a real kick out of that. I thought that was really funny. And then we go into the opening credits, and they changed the opening credits, and we had we didn't get the "It's Been a Long Way" song. That was gone. We got a more, heavy war type of song, and
right,
and all these visions of our darker aspects of history,
dropping bombs and blowing up a colony on the moon.
Yeah, and then that Terran Empire symbol just pops up there in your face, and I was like, oh god, it's a mirror episode.
Yeah,
I don't know how much I've talked about this. I have a little bit of an aversion to mirror universe stuff. Not because I think it's bad or anything, but it's just, I feel like it's been overexposed a lot. And so I'm kind of like, whenever I see mirror universe, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit.
Well, I think Discovery really grounded into the ground. I'm sorry, and again, to turn around and harper on the first season of Discovery, which, we know Jen doesn't like, as she mentioned it. I can't really rewatch the first season of Discovery. It's just, to me, it's really tough. Yeah. But they spent almost half of it in the mirror universe, or maybe a third, maybe a quarter of it, and it was just not good. Did not care for it. So anyway,
but there was a lot of really good things that I enjoyed in this episode. I really like seeing the Tholians, and kind of seeing them in more up to date graphics. Probably, I think for the first time.
Yep. Yeah, big time. Yeah, because we
haven't seen them since.
Yeah, and we had only seen them once previously, if in TOS, if I'm not mistaken.
In the Tholian Web, and only.
Within the episode that provided the USS Defiant, which is a Connie 1, it's Constitution Class 1. Mm-hmm. And there are great stories around the lengths they went to rebuild those sets. And it's funny because it throws into, disarray what some might view as continuity issues with, Discovery and Strange New Worlds and change stuff around. But at the time, what they did with this, we also got an updated Gorn in the second part, which has now changed even more with Strange New Worlds.
I think they should have stuck with this Gorn because it still had like more of the humanoid bipedal aspect, but still emphasized some of the lizard look. Yeah, I think it was a good melding of an update. That's one thing that Enterprise did do really, really well, generally, was updating the makeup from TOS to something newer. Like the Tellarites looked much better. The Andorians looked way better.
Right.
So anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
There's actually, on that note, I remember a while back, there was a makeup magazine that came out, and they actually published the formula that they used for the makeup. And somewhere I have that recipe. And we use it for a lot of our makeup and stuff when we do cosplay.
For the Andorian makeup?
Yeah.
That would be very interesting.
We could be seeing Peter make his debut as an Andorian sometime soon.
You'll see me at Grand Rapids Comic-Con. Join Starfleet Pink Skin.
Yes. Thanks, Pink Skin. We do get that out in one of the later episodes. One of the only lines I like from the finale was Shran's daughter saying, "Thanks, Pink Skin." But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
That was funny.
I am a fellow Andorian lover, so yeah.
Yes.
It was great. I'll have to find that recipe again. And it worked really well. We did an entire body purple.
Oh, wow.
For con, and it was fantastic.
Really? I love it.
yeah, side story for that. Anyway, but yeah, getting back to this, no, I really enjoyed seeing like all the classic, the ship and the uniforms and everything, and seeing Archer and the green wrap. Of course, you know the green wrap is my all-time favorite uniform.
That's classic. You've got one, and you look great in it too.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love it. That was like my dream uniform, and I
Yeah.
finally got my hands on one, and it's a lot of fun, and I loved it. I love seeing Archer in it. I really enjoyed seeing Mirror Archer coming to terms with his counterpart, that's, you know, this accomplished hero and everything. And in this universe, Mirror Archer is kind of an underling. You know, he's kind of been under thumb his entire life. He wasn't even captain of the Enterprise in the Mirror universe. He was the first officer. And I like seeing how the news that in another world he was something better, how that kind of messed with his head a little bit.
Yeah, because he had Head Archer. It was kind of like in Battlestar, you know, with Caprica 6, you know, kind of egging him on and like, you suck, Baltar. You know, it's just really, you know, motivating, demotivating.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I thought that was a really great aspect and a way to kind of build the character and in a way kind of show us the journey that Archer has been on, because earlier in the season, you know, we saw him having that conflict of, you know, he's feeling like he's not an explorer anymore and he's too much of a warrior. And this episode, we kind of get that script flipped on its head, where he's very much a, you know, violent warrior type, and then seeing how much more successful he was as an explorer and how that kind of rocked his world a little bit. I thought that was kind of an interesting play on what we had seen previously.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. But yeah,
sure.
Overall, those were my favorite beats in it. Just a lot of really good story to it. A lot of fun seeing a lot of the old Star Trek reference and the updated Tholians and the Gorn and all that. Those were fantastic and by far my favorite parts of the episode.
Yeah, and that's I think, as I've read, a lot of what, you know, the late Manny Cotto did for this is because he was brought in as, you know, a major player, if not entirely, for this season, and taking the reins as the main showrunner and just really saying, hey, you know what really works is we start to draw closer to TOS is growing that connective tissue and seeing how we can flesh out some.
Let's lean into the fact that we are a prequel to something we already know.
Exactly. Instead of what I think was really lacking, what I really feel was the show set up the show for failure, is that in seasons 1 and 2, it was doing a lot of the same story beats we got out of Voyager, which was a lot of the same story beats that we got out of TNG. You know, it was there's a strange thing loose on the ship, but it's also a, you know, sentient life form or whatever, and it's the, you know, or we're in a catwalk, or, you know, it's just So it was too little, too late. But this was for me, it was one of my favorites. But Peter, you go first and I'll bring it home.
All right. This is one of my favorite episodes just in Enterprise, period. Yes, I know it's the Mirror Universe and a lot of people have mixed feelings about it. When I was growing up, I loved the Mirror Universe, mostly because my introduction to it was not... I actually didn't grow up with the Mirror Universe episodes from Deep Space Nine. I grew up, this is going to sound terrible, but I grew up reading the Shatnerverse books, which bring in the Mirror Universe.
Not actual Tech War, though. No, I'm just...
No, not Tech War, but the Star Trek ones where Kirk comes back.
Then they dig him up and reanimate him. And
there's this whole thing, and how they bring him back is kind of, you know, whatever. But like the rest of the story, there's this whole arc where they deal with the Mirror Universe. And so for me, that was my major introduction, other than Mirror.
Yeah. Same. I also love those books. Those are great.
Yeah. So that was my dealing with the Mirror Universe, where it was like, it was more militaristic, it was more intense, and you had characters who were devious and did all these different things. So for me, when I first saw this, the Mirror Universe wasn't played out. Yeah. And so I really liked seeing that and seeing how, like, you know, the technology isn't quite as good, but like they're still cruel, and you have like Marines, and you saw the beginning of the agony booth and all of this stuff. Like, you know, everyone jokes about how like Dr. Phlox doesn't have medical ethics. Well, here's the version that really doesn't have medical ethics.
He's so nasty. Reed is, my God,
Reed is horrible. So, but there's lots of really awesome stuff in here. We see Saval as a Vulcan freedom fighter for all of like 5 seconds before he gets blown up.
He was trying real hard. Yeah.
So, but one thing that like really, really stuck out to me that I always would bring up, especially when like the JJ movies were coming out, and then later when Discovery started doing things, I really liked how In a Mirror Darkly took the time to recreate the original series sets, but treat them as they were technology.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I really, really appreciated, where it's like, I've said this to multiple people. It's like, if you treat it like a cardboard set, it'll feel like a cardboard set. If you treat it with the thought that this is an advanced technology that can really kick your ass,
right,
and you as the audience will feel like this is a technology
even
that
if
will
it's just
really
a bunch of colorful round
even
buttons
if it's just gumdrops on wood.
Yeah.
But like the way that they treated the Defiant, and like it could kick the Tholians out of the quadrant, could destroy the NX with like 3 phaser blasts.
Right.
Like the way that they showed that this ship, it's 100 years newer, but the way that they like respected the fact that there is 100 years of development, and then we're like, it's the original series, but it's still technology that is advanced and can do a lot of things. We're not going to treat it like cheap. And so that's one thing that I really, really appreciated about In a Mirror Darkly, especially like how you shoot, how you light really changes how you perceive those sets and that ship. So I think like, especially in a Mirror Darkly, they did more of the TOS style lighting on the exterior because that's just kind of how it worked. Mm-hmm. But I think that these episodes really show how if you light them and if you treat them properly, there is a way to bring TOS visuals into the modern media.
Right.
And so so I know this is a little bit of a rant, but this is why I point at these episodes of like, there isn't a real reason to do like a major visual retcon of stuff, because if you take the time and you honor what happened before, there is a way to still make it new, make it a big deal, but still be tied into what it actually did look like. And I'm not past like adding details, because they did change certain things on the sets, like some of the angles were different, and that's fine.
Well, and in fairness, it was a different ship, and even though it's virtually identical, it's going to be a couple of twists and turns. And they added something like they did an MSD when Reed was doing his presentation, like, we think the Gorn is here, and
they made sure that the screens above did do things, which they did do in the cage and where no man has gone before. So like they brought that back in. They added more Jeffries tubes in a really interesting way. They added more functionality to certain things. They showed you what things that we just kind of saw hanging off on the edge did. Yeah. So there were lots of really cool nods, lots of really cool things that I thought that helped. This is the one show that like embraced TOS and brought it in. Like Trials and Tribulations did too, but not in the same way, because they were like bouncing back and forth.
Well, and it was certainly more satirical, where there was nothing about this that was satirical.
Yeah, whereas this one just like full embrace of TOS, which I really love to see, which I know some people don't care, some people don't like TOS, that's fine. But this was something that this was one of the episodes that really shows how Manny Koto really wanted to bring that full circle of Enterprise back into TOS. And so I think that that's one of the things, story and everything, which is amazing aside, this just stands out of the love for Star Trek. Right. And so that's why I really love this episode.
This to me was an episode that in the end, it was the, how do they describe Raiders of the Lost Ark? If Indiana Jones wasn't there at all, nothing ever would have changed. Because this was completely all self-contained. It really didn't change anything with our characters that we saw when the next episode picked up, which was totally fine, because it painted with a broader canvas that taught, okay, well, how did technology jump forward in the 100 years between this time frame and then when we meet Spock with the goatee, and why is everybody so why are the Vulcans different here than they are in the Mirror episode of TOS? So we have 100 years in between. The only person you could really root for were the Vulcans in this, because they were trying to do their thing. Ultimately Saval dies, but T'Pol lives. There's a great non-canon beta canon series of novels after this that I read that I really enjoyed. I don't remember all of the details, but T'Pol survives and she goes on and does a bunch of stuff and yada yada yada, and it makes sense how that leads to the Vulcans being a little bit less, like the redheaded stepchild that they appear to be in this, by the time we get, to TOS, where, they're ordering Spock to, kill Kirk and take over, where that's not something that would obviously happen within this time frame. So this was great. Archer as a Mirror character he's trash, and I love that everybody is trash. you're not rooting for anybody. Even to Paul is, she's within her ethics. She'll do a 69 mind fuck on Trip to distract him. She says, well, I lured you away from engineering by saying, we bang. And then she mind blobs him so that she can mess with the engines because she's trying to stick to the mission. So everybody has their like really bendable ethics in this. And then some people are just trash. Hoshi is trash, but she wins in the end, and by just kind of jumping from bed to bed and just overall being nasty. I know the actors in particular always talk about, I really love these because I could, dig my teeth in, like Nana Visitor, who we'll see this week in the Grand Rapids Comic-Con, really got to dig her teeth in when she played the Intendant on those DS9 episodes, which from some ways, some of it were serious, and in the end of it, they played it off. It got a little silly. The last couple were pretty silly because they turned them into Ferengi episodes. But anyway, we'll talk to those once we get there. So, well, cool. All right. Yes. Good stuff. All right. Two-parter number 2. Oh boy. And this is, it's a really short description, but we have episodes 20 and 21 are Demons and Terra Prime. In universe, January 2155. We got LeVar Burton directing part 1, Marvin Rush directing part 2. Manny Cotto does the writing for the first part, and then part 2 is a screenplay by Andre Boreamis. Manny does the teleplay, and helping with both the screenplay and the teleplay are the Reeve Stevens, Judith and Garfield. Aired in May of 2005. A xenophobic faction of humanity threatens to undermine talks to form a new coalition of planets. A human isolationist leader, aka RoboCop, threatens to destroy Starfleet Command unless all aliens leave the Sol system immediately. This one also got a what if spinoff that I remembered enjoying quite a bit. So, Peter, you snuck in the first "Oh Boy," which is, of course, very famously Scott Bakula's character, Dr. Samuel Beckett from Quantum Leap. That was always his catchphrase.
Oh, that was it was.
Yes, it was. So why don't you take us off?
Okay. So this is really the finale for the show in a way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, chronologically, it is. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, chronologically, it is. But boy, what happens? Like, we deal with extreme xenophobia of like aliens, like people trying to kick aliens off of Earth. The interesting thing is that we get a little bit of an insight into why Terra Prime wants to do what they do, and at face value, like, you understand it. Like, the Xindi wiped out a whole bunch of human beings, and so just go away. It's a gut reaction of, no, this was horrible. So, like, you get it, but at the same time, you're like, dude, that's dumb. Yeah. But like, we get a whole bunch of that. We get a whole bunch of like, there's a spy on the ship, and they're trying to figure out who it is. You have a tie back into Section 31, where Archer orders Reed to go reestablish connection, which I'm sure if there was a season 5, we would have gotten even more Section 31 shenanigans, because now Reed is considered to be in his debt.
And do keep in mind that will be the topic of our next episode and segment 2. We're going to talk about the hypothetical season 5 of Enterprise, so we'll have lots of time to expound on that.
We also get a not exactly, but we get a child of Trip and T'Pol, which everyone was kind of like the will they won't they sort of deal throughout the most recent of season 4.
Right.
It's not their child because it was genetically created in a lab.
It's a what do they call it? A strand cast? Isn't that what they call them in Star Wars? It was
So we get that, and we have the interesting thing is that we get also this whole thing about there's the hypocrisy of the xenophobes, where it's like you're saying aliens need to stay away, but then I'm using alien technology to heal myself from issues that I have.
Peter Weller's character had a version of arthritis or something like that. So he
had a congenital disease. So an interesting side note of a character that we see in video form is Colonel Green, who we haven't seen since the Savage Curtain. So it's a deep cut, but it's a character that was around after the Third World War that called for culling of genetic anomalies.
Right.
So it's kind of, and you see which is interesting. You see how someone idolizes someone who is an absolutely horrible person.
Right.
And so there's some interesting social commentary there of like how people can take a horrible person and latch onto one idea that might be kind of okay, and then be like, well, then everything that they say is all right.
We're not touching that one.
That's not a good idea. I mean, we know exactly where the parallels are in here for 20th century Earth. So that's what they were touching on.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see how all of that pans out. It is kind of funny how the main weapon is a mining laser. Like it's a mining ship that like suddenly can go to warp.
Right.
Okay.
Huge freaking lasers. He's very Dr. Evil.
I mean, it's a laser that's supposed to blast comets. But the interesting thing is that there's this disconnect with these guys of like, we're going to start shooting things. It's like, you do realize that you're doing the exact same thing that you hate the Xindi for. You're shooting at Earth.
Right.
But they don't see that connection because they're very, very focused on what they want.
But it's a smaller laser. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, only if Trip manages to configure it. Otherwise, it will blow up the entirety of San Francisco rather than Starfleet Command.
We get one of Paxton is the character. RoboCop. It's Peter Weller who was RoboCop, which is what it referred to. You get one of his goons making this big reparation speech. Why didn't we get reparations from the Xindi and blah blah blah? And this was during the time when here in America that slavery reparations were being discussed. So I thought it was kind of a weird on the nose speech, particularly being delivered by a person of color. So I thought that was kind of weird to happen at the time. But Aaron, first time watching it, thoughts on the two-parter?
I really enjoyed this two-parter. First and foremost, huge fan of Peter Weller, and I'm really, really excited to see him. I really love his villains. He does villain really good.
Yeah.
We of course got to see him in Star Trek before
he was into Darkness, unfortunately, but he was a good part of it.
Yeah,
my opinion.
Admiral Marcus in that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun, and I had that in the back of my mind the entire time I was watching this. I'm like, are we seeing a relative, a distant descendant of Admiral Marcus? Is this come around again later?
Turns out not.
Yeah, no, I guess not. But it was a lot of fun to speculate, and seeing him gosh, he's got such a commanding presence, and he's a great villain. And this is one of those episodes that while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, if I was watching this when I was a teenager, I'd be thinking, wow, this is kind of out there, and this is something that would never ever happen. And now I'm watching it today, and I'm like, wow, this is really topical and relevant to what's going on.
It's pretty terrifying. Yeah, and like I said, and like the xenophobia, but then the selective, but I'm also using alien DNA to help myself out. So
that part especially,
exactly. So picking and choosing which parts of your radical ideology. But again, you got the sheep who are like I said, the guy who's speaking in the mind, and he's like blah blah blah, and everybody's like rah, rah, where we don't need to dig too deep into that, but the parallels that exist in 2024 are terrifying. So that really was an underscore, I think, watching this again. And as a finale of the series, unintentionally, or I should say not unintentionally, but potentially more unintended, because I think as we get into talking about the finale, which Rick Berman, who co-wrote it, who is frequently demonized as someone who just both behind the scenes and just overall in media, the person who presided over essentially the first golden age of Star Trek, that he and Brandon Braga, who wrote this finale, which we'll get into in a moment, called it a love letter to the fans, which I'm quite certain all three of us can refer that it is something else to the fans in the form of a middle finger. But, as this is a finale to the series, it had some elements that had things move forward with this, like that scene between T'Pol and Trip at the end, where they're both, Trip's in tears, but T'Pol's doing as much emoting as a Vulcan can get away with, someone who has, neural pathway damage from Trellium D. So she's a little bit more emotional, and them talking about how they could have a child someday. And that was something else that when we get into this finale, that just absolutely just gets railroaded. That entire scene was just trashed, and that just really burns my ass. But there were parts of this that I really dug, and It was great. Peter, you touched upon the Section 31 part. I had mentioned that same guy. He was the Alien Nation guy, which was a show on Fox in the 90s. And then he was also came back and had a guest starring role in an episode of DS9 as a Starfleet captain. I like that actor, and I'm forgetting his name, but he was great. He was Harris or Harrison. I think Harris. So he was our first Section 31 guy back when Section 31 was kind of respectable, when we had the DS9 version to this. And then again, Discovery season 2, just kind of dragging it for what it didn't need to be. But anyway, great two-parter, loved it. As a de facto unintended finale of the series, we get like about 60% of the way there as far as this is where I want to stop remembering anything that happens in Star Trek Enterprise, because then, unfortunately, we get into what is billed as the series finale. Episode 22 is called "These Are the Voyages." We get a star date in this one because this is not actually taking place in the 22nd century. This is taking place in the 24th. Star date is 47457.1, placing it within the season 7 TNG episode, The Pegasus. Alan Craker is the director, veteran director, so I cannot put that back on him. But it is written by the self-styled Dream Team, as I had mentioned, of Berman and Braga. Final episode aired on May 13 of 2005. In the future, in hopes of receiving some help before making a difficult personal decision, Commander William T. Riker of the Enterprise D observes a holodeck simulation of the final mission of the original Enterprise, as commanded by Jonathan Archer, in the days immediately preceding the birth of the United Federation of Planets over 2 centuries earlier, season finale. And I'm gonna start this off with a single solitary sentence. What the fuck were they thinking? This is breaking this story. Pardon my French. I'm sorry about that, but what the hell were they thinking? I would rather watch Shades of Grey 10 times in a row, the TNG clip show from the end of season 2, than consider this. Come on, Peter. Give me that much. This is an abomination. It takes everything. I feel like it took everything that our characters did. Like I mentioned, the season, the way the previous two-parter ended with T'Pol and Trip having that wonderful moment talking about there's still a chance for us, and they immediately plug in a scene from this that say, "Oh, it's been 6 years and we never got back together." It's like, oh. Because they spend the whole episode doing the buddy cop thing. Because at the end of it, Trip sacrifices himself for a couple of random ass aliens to save the captain's life. And the plot line with Shran, it's like, after the last time you saw me, I knocked up the blind girl and we started a family. Now I got to rescue my kid, which is it's the most obnoxious trope in any storytelling, in my opinion, at all. You get Riker and Troy are the main characters of this. It's 10 years after the last two of them put on these old-timey spacesuits. Obviously, they've aged a bit. You can see it in their faces. You get Marina Sirtis. God bless her. I've met her several times in person. She's a firecracker. But she's not doing the Troy accent that would be appropriate to the time frame. So that kind of pulled me out of it. But that's a nitpick. The TNG sets were not bad. You get a voice cameo from Brett Spiner that really nails it. I think that was the most accurate part of it. Jonathan Frakes, God bless him, does not look like Riker did in that episode. His hair is, they should toss him in a wig because his hair was thinner, which happens to me. My hair is thinner than it was 10 years ago. That's okay. It's just nothing about this worked. It was I take it back. I feel like watching that final scene where Archer's going to walk out and give his big speech, and then there's going to be the signing of that first UFP charter. When he has that great scene with T'Pol, which our characters don't even watch, it's happening and they're not there, because our characters are standing in the dais and listening to the other characters talk about what their plans are for the future. Manny Cotto gets a cameo. He's one of the admirals that is sitting behind our people. That's the only scene that works. Is the scene that our people, that Riker and Troy ostensibly don't even see. And then it ends, and I'm sorry, okay, we get a part where we get the 3 Enterprises, going back and forth, and it's done in CGI, and you hear the 3 captains give their version of the, where no man has gone before speech, and then fade to crap. Just A failure on almost every level. 0 stars, do not recommend. Aaron, take it away.
This episode had a lot of missed opportunities. I'm looking at my calendar right now because Star Trek Nemesis came out in May of 2005.
Right.
And this was October. I think I had
this is May of 2005. That movie, I think Nemesis maybe came out at the end of 2002, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a holiday movie in 2002. I remember seeing it.
Yeah, because Insurrection was 99.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So and the reason I bring this up because it perplexes me that I like the idea of the holodeck. I like the cameo with Riker and Deanna. I thought that was a better part of the episode. But what perplexes me about it is that they picked the Pegasus timeline, a series of events for that to take place in. And I was thinking it would make more sense if this was him conflicted about leaving the Enterprise and taking over his own command aboard the Titan.
Right, yeah. Totally would be a better way to spin it. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the same conflicts, the inner conflict with Riker, the same questions, the same doubts, but then you don't have to pretend that they're 10 years younger or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think it would have worked better. You've already got the uniforms and everything. I mean, they're filmed right next door to each other for the most part.
Right.
I mean, it just seemed to me like it would have been a no-brainer. And then, tease the movie of Nemesis and everything, and call back to that. I think it would have been more solid.
Right.
So I wasn't a fan of that.
It did seem very random to pick this weird point. Like I said, to be in the writer's room when they're breaking this, I just, what are you doing? Very much a what are you doing kind of moment as far as I'm concerned.
And then I just got two more big grievances with this. The whole Tucker thing and him getting killed off felt very unnecessary and abrupt.
Big time.
It was unwarranted. I did not like it. It felt like they were going to try and tug at your heartstrings, but I didn't feel like it was an earned moment.
Yeah.
It just kind of came out of left field, and that's not good. Part of me wonders if they had more preparation time, knowing that this was how they were going to end it. Would the previous episode have gone differently with them having a kid and everything?
Right.
Because I think that would have been an interesting plot development to see, especially going right into your final episode.
Yeah,
that would have been a lot more interesting, and because I didn't like the kid getting killed off at the end. I would have liked to see this complication,
right?
Something they have to live with. I thought that would have been more interesting. But to me, the absolutely worst part about this episode, and what really pissed me off the most, was at the very end where they're getting ready to do the speech with the Federation meeting, and Troy's up there, and she's like, "Oh, I had to memorize this speech for high school," and or for the academy. And I'm like, okay, cool. We'll get to hear the speech. And then nothing comes of it. We do not hear the speech. And I'm like, why?
It's like they just want to keep sticking it to you. That's what this episode feels like. It's like, oh, you're starting to let me twist that knife a little bit more. It's just an unfolding, untold series of horrors is what this is to me.
Yeah.
It just gets worse. It's like what's the line from The Princess Bride with Billy Crystal? He says, "Why don't you give me a paper cut and pour lemon in it?" I mean, that's what this episode is. This is one paper cut that goes from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, and somebody is dumping a can of gasoline in it. That is what this episode is.
Absolutely.
I have spoken.
and when it comes to Star Trek, the dialogue and the speeches and all that's like one of my favorite aspects of it. I just felt robbed. I felt robbed to hear that last speech from Archer.
Oh my gosh, no doubt. All right, Peter, take us home. Yeah. What else is there to say, right?
Yeah. So Rick Berman and Brandon Braga said that this was a love letter to the fans. And to their credit, they did apologize for this after the fact. They did. Berman is on record saying like, "Well, we thought this was going to be great, and then we saw the fan reaction to it, and we went back and looked at it, and it was like, this was a terrible decision."
That's what made it not great, is what the fans thought, not the just.
I mean, sometimes it requires someone else to say, "Hey, that sucks."
Oh, like George Lucas. Got it, George.
Right. Sometimes you need feedback to be told that it's garbage.
Oh my God.
So like, I understand where they're coming from, especially like because it was like the major series, like the tent pole of TNG, TOS tying it into what they were trying to lead into, and then the show that they were on. So like I understood why they were doing it and why they said it during the series rather than the films, because then they could get the Enterprise D, which everyone saw on television. Like I get that.
I get that aspect of it too.
But it was still a very poor decision as a series finale. It would have been okay if they did it like as like, you know, like a two-parter like In a Mirror Darkly, where we get like a different look at a series of events from the characters, you know, like how we had Living History and Voyager. So there are ways to do it where you get something like this that doesn't suck. But the main reason that this sucked is because, one, it's the last time we see these characters.
Right.
Two, in the frame of this episode, they're already dead. So we're not saying goodbye to them. They're already gone. Right. And so I think that's a lot of what really kills it for a lot of us, is that we're supposed to be saying goodbye to these characters, but they're already gone. It's after the fact. And yeah, to Aaron's point, like we miss out on Archer's speech that founds the United Federation of Planets. You know, only the biggest event in Star Trek history.
Right. Basically the defining end to his character, and why, you know, he stayed. Daniel's like, you've got to stay alive because this is your destiny. You've got to do this thing.
Like you should have wrapped this up with like Daniels or something where you tie in everything that you've already done. But because Berman and Braga weren't really involved in season 4 until now, a lot of all of that character building and stuff that had been going on in the world building that Manny Coto was so focused on, like with Demons and Terra Prime, and especially In a Mirror Darkly and others, they just didn't do it. And Braga is, you know, well known to not be the biggest fan of TOS. So the fact that they kind of like TOS is completely shunted out except for that final shot makes sense, which completely flies in the face of everything that Manny Coto was doing in the rest of the season.
That's why if you look at him as an extra in this, he looks super pissed.
Yeah, I mean, I would be too.
Just kind of looking around and rolling his eyes.
Really, but at least they made him a 3-pip admiral, you know?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So I thought that, like, obviously I don't want to, like, belabor the point, but killing off Trip was terrible. There are books where they bring him back.
Right.
Cool, but we haven't seen him back on screen, so it doesn't have the same weight. There's the missed opportunity of showing development in the ship or referencing things that should have already happened. Like we already know that there was a Romulan war that like arguably that could have explained why Trip and T'Pol never fully got back together, because they were fighting all the time. Right. But they don't use that as an excuse. It doesn't even as a throwaway line. The Romulan war doesn't even get mentioned at all. Exactly. And this was a huge driving force to why the Federation was founded. Right. Which is weird, because Berman did know a lot of this stuff, but didn't stick it into this episode, which is odd, because if you read a lot of stuff about him working with Michael Piller and other people, like he did know a lot about TOS and all of these things. So you would think that he would be able to throw it in, but he didn't. And so, so there's just a lot of choices in the script with who was writing it are just absolutely baffling as to, like, you'd think that with these two writing it, because of their knowledge of the shows and their history, it wouldn't suck. And with Alan Croker directing it, it shouldn't suck, but it does.
But here we are, or we were.
And then we had like these attempts at character moments where, like, hey, let's get a little bit of insight into these characters that we're saying goodbye to, in the place of Riker playing the chef that we've never seen. Right. Which was, those were just some of the weirdest scenes for me, because it was like, I mean, we got a little bit of insight to the characters, but why? It just felt very odd.
It was weak. Yeah, it was weak.
And then they tried to do like the 1-2 punch of like 3 minutes after Trip dies, Riker is now talking to a live version of him, which was just that again is what kind of undercuts and makes Trip's death just bizarre and stupid, is that like he died, but now he's back, but he's also dead, and it's there's,
how does it make you feel?
There's just so many stupid decisions in this series. I do really like the final shot. I also like the thing with T'Pol and Archer. That was, I know everyone's been saying that was great. It was really good. The rest of the characters don't really get a whole lot to do, which is weird. Yeah, because Enterprise out of all of them has been the more like ensemble cast out of like
Right.
any of the Star Trek shows,
Right.
which I think
yeah.
out of all of them, Enterprise has so far done it best, I think. And so it's just really weird to see them kind of sidelined and not really do all that much except for like their interviews, especially like, Travis and Hoshi just kind of like, yeah, they're there.
Yeah, right.
Which is just kind of weird. But the final shot, the final music cue is one of my favorites in Enterprise, just because it's really cool to show that connection between Star Trek at that point and to the ending point of what we saw. So even though the rest of the episode is just hot garbage, best of intentions, but hot garbage, the final shot is really well done, but it's something that you feel could more belong at like the end of a documentary or the beginning of like a celebration of Star Trek, rather than
Ken Burns Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah. So it's just one of those like, but again, the best of intentions, the path to hell is lined with the best of intentions. And in this case, that's kind of where we ended, which kind of sucks. But yeah, it's not great. There's a lot of, there's good ideas in here, good parts, but the execution and how it all pans out, it doesn't work.
You've just described the Star Wars prequels to me. Lots of great little bits. Duel of the Fates. I wish we could have a movie that was just that, but yeah, we ended with that. All right, well, doing a best and a worst out of this batch is going to be a real quick deal. I almost get the feeling that we're going to say the same thing, and it's pretty.
We all know what one is.
It's pretty obvious to me, for me, that our Mirror Universe two-parter stands head and shoulders above. It's one of the best in the series, in my opinion. And then there's no doubt that the burning hot garbage dumpster fire, which we just wrapped up discussing, is the worst of the worst. So that's my take. Aaron.
Pardon the pun, but I mirror your opinion.
Oh, wow. Didn't see that coming. And Peter, would it be safe to...
We're going to go for the trifecta. As much as I love Demons and Terra Prime, In a Mirror Darkly is just a couple steps above, just for just sheer awesomeness and timeline consistency.
We got out of 5, so we got we got a 4 out of 5 play that we were enjoying everything. So we almost made it. Yeah, there is no single episode and there's no single finale in particular that is bad. And I would almost say there's no single episode of any of all of Star Trek that could be as bad as this.
These Are the Voyages is probably one of the worst, if not the worst, aired episode
segment,
of Star Trek.
Yeah, definitely top 5 worst.
Yeah, which sucks because of all of the wonderful people and attempts involved, but it's just not good.
No doubt about it. All right, gang. Well, that wraps us up on this very interesting episode of our show. Thank you, everyone, always for listening. Aaron, where do people find you out in the world?
Check out ussrhapsody.org. That's got all of our links to our SFI chapter, USS Rhapsody of Southwest Michigan.
Awesome. And Peter?
You can find me on the Discord of the Grand Petoskey. You can also find me over on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channel, where we're playing Star Trek Adventures. And then you can also find me in behind the scenes doing some stuff on Starship Excelsior.
Fantastic. And I am active over on Threads and Instagram. What am I? Who again? C3 Carpenter. Spell it out. It's getting late at night for me. Very, very active in the Discord, both for the Grand Petoskey and, of course, for our main Secret Friends Unite. It's the most funnest corner of Discord. That's what I've decided. So we're going to stick with it. Don't look it up. But also, like Peter, I am a part of the USS Grand Petoskey. My wife April and I do run it. We're one of the bigger chapters of SFI in the world. And I also have the privilege of running Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada, helping great folks like Aaron get his chapter off the ground. And we're growing all the time, and we're very enthusiastic about it. If you visit sfi.org, you can find a chapter near you, or even think about starting your own, no matter where you live. I'm very, very happy to help you out with that. So with that, friends, as always, I will tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Remember, 1,000 stars is a million maybes.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.